and welcome to the Albright Scholar for September 2022. My name is John Pankratz. I teach history at Albright, and each month it's my privilege to welcome BCTV viewers and residents of Greater Reading to take a glimpse inside our learning community up on North 13th Street, to look at the work being done by teachers and students, and to think about its impact on all of us. Well, it is September, and I will tell you that school has been in session now for 2 weeks, and there is a spirit on the Albright campus. We have a large and very talented first-year class. The seniors are remembering what it was like to be first-year students themselves, and the campus has a liveliness and a hopefulness, and I think a spirit of creativity going on as well. It's been my tradition in this September edition of the show to welcome David Tanner, our director of the Center for the Arts at Albright, to give us a little bit of a preview of the coming arts season throughout this semester and throughout the year at the college, and to brag a little bit about our students and to brag about our colleagues as well. David has been at a conference. He's somewhere in the Midwest driving back to Reading, and so he couldn't join us tonight here in the studio down on Penn Street. And so I'm going to be here alone, but this gives me a chance to brag about David. We'll call up his picture here. For a long time, David was director of the Center for the Arts at Albright, our wonderful building and our wonderful departments and gallery. He has recently been promoted. David is now the Dean of Arts and Cultural Resources at Albright, and very appropriately so. He has such a deep appreciation of all the arts, the visual arts, the musical arts, theatrical arts, fashion as well. And of course, he is wonderfully inserted into the arts community of Greater Reading. So congratulations to David and safe travels on your way back. I know too that were he here, he would brag about his assistant, the assistant director of the Center for the Arts, Stephen Nicodemus. Stephen is an Albright graduate. He's a visual artist himself, and he has become a gifted videographer and recorder and scheduler and everything else. He's part of that glue that gets the arts talking to each other and gets those departments and those institutions at Albright connecting with the community and connecting with our students. So if you were to call, say, the box office at the theater at 610-921-7547, Stephen would answer the phone, and you could engage with him, and he'd talk to you about upcoming shows, exhibits, and events at the Center for the Arts. I'm going to do that myself and talk about fashion. We're going to talk about theater. We'll talk about music, and we will talk about the visual arts as well. Just last week, in fact, just last Friday, Albright students and Albright faculty in our fashion department were on Fifth Avenue in New York City for something called New York Fashion Week. You may have heard of it. This is the second year in a row that Albright student designers, current students and alumni have come to New York to show their work to essentially an international audience. It was a very exciting, very well attended occasion. I have a picture of the student designers. I even know their names. On the left is Liz Pauley. She's a 2007 graduate of Albright. I'll say a few more things about her later on. Camille Fuller, and then Nyalija Fournelier, a more recent student. Then Jennifer Rainieri, who went on to the University of Alabama to get her Master of Fine Arts in costume design. In the middle, the very distinguished gentleman is R. Scott French. Scott was an Albright graduate in the 1980s and went on to create his own brands, his own fashion lines in New York, to work as the director of design for Bill Blass and other fashion houses. He is now the director of Very New York, which is an event presenting and publicizing center based on Fifth Avenue. And it was at his invitation that Albright presented last year and presented this year, right in the heart of New York Fashion Week. To our right is Olivia Connor, another recent Albright grad and designer. Nick Kedge graduated just last year. Jonathan Otero graduated a couple years ago and is working full-time in the fashion industry. And then Sarah Kim on the right is a 2022 graduate of the college. All of these people showed multiple looks, multiple designs and outfits at the New York Fashion Week runway show. These pictures are hot off the press. This is one of Camille's designs. She works with natural fabrics and she works with natural dyes. So dyes made out of foodstuffs, plant material, and other things like that. So no chemicals at all. And she comes up with these wonderful, soft and subtle colors and patterns. This is a work by Jonathan, and dramatic, fabulous, with the huge sleeves and the extra rows of hemming down at the bottom. And just briefly, this is a piece by Sarah Kim. She's very interested in costume design, so this is somewhere between haute couture and some fantasy film, I think, that she's created. So those are just a few of the works. If you go to the Albright Center for the Arts website, you'll be able to see plenty more of them. This was an accomplishment for these students, for the college, and certainly for my colleagues, Doreen Berdalski and Paula Trimpe and Mia Oronk, Joycelyn Burdette, and then also the newest member of the fashion department. I think I have a picture of her passing out water and keeping everybody well hydrated in New York. This is Elizabeth Quinn. And while she didn't mentor these current students, I have a feeling that she's going to be a very important mentor to Albright fashion students in coming years. As I said, one of the designers presenting at New York Fashion Week was Liz Pauley. And Liz has recently joined the Albright faculty, not in the fashion department, but the theater department as a designer of costume. So this gives me a chance to transition to the theater piece. She's dressed up in her academic regalia because at our opening convocation, she was one of the keynote speakers. And as an Albright graduate who went on to do graduate work at the Conservatory of the University of Cincinnati, and now returning to her alma mater with enormous amounts of professional experience in costuming and design, she's going to be designing most of the theatrical shows that we'll see on the Albright stage. And I think students really appreciated seeing someone who had been in their position maybe 15 years before. Okay. Well, let's talk a little bit about the theater season, because things are happening. One of the reasons I don't have any theater guests with me tonight is because they're in rehearsal. The first show of the season is something called The Big House. And not only is it going to be performed starting on September 29th, it's being written as we speak. This is a devised piece of theater, not written by a single playwright, but growing out of the observations, the thoughts, the experiences with home by the Albright students who have been cast in the show. And there are more than 20 students participating. This whole event is being produced and directed by Matt Fotis, professor of theater, designed by the birthday girl herself, Cocole Bernal, this fellow here on the screen, Donald Quinlan, is our new technical director in the theater, and we're delighted to have him working with all of our theatrical productions. And then our new director our new lighting designer and director, Jen Rock, is a deeply experienced lighting professional, and I think is going to make a huge difference to the look of all our shows. So it's a thrill to have some new faces as well as the new first-year class participating so deeply. The second main stage show of the fall will be Tartuffe by Molière in the adaptation by Richard Wilbur, and this will be directed by Julia Matthews, who's directed so many classic pieces on the Wachovia Theater stage over the years. Tartuffe is a biting social comedy written in the 17th century, but it's going to feel awfully current to many of you. Then in the spring, we are going to stage Orlando, based on the novella by Virginia Woolf, and written by the great playwright Sarah Ruhl, many of whose works we've produced over the years. And Orlando in February will be guest directed by Andrea Hart, who directed one of our plays last year. And then finally, in April, Jeffrey Lentz is going to direct Spring Awakening, the musical, with music by Duncan Sheik and Stephen Sater, based on the literary work by Frank Wedekind. This musical won the Tony Award for Best Musical back in 2007, and we're really thrilled to see students moving and singing on stage. I think we're going to have some really mind-blowing talent on display. Jeff is directing, Kokol is designing that show in April. In between the main stage presentations, there will be lots of improv, lots of sketch comedy, and student-directed shorter pieces as well. We are doing theater live. We did last year as well with spaced seating and mandatory masks. Now Albright is certainly watching and waiting and taking its cue from public health authorities and being careful and safe. Masks are encouraged, masks are appreciated, but masks are not mandatory on the campus right now as of September 12th, 2022. So you should feel welcome, and you should feel welcome to wear your mask if you're more comfortable in that situation as well. But we do hope you will come to campus to see many of these theatrical events. There's going to be a lot of music on campus as well, and I think we're very excited by that. One of the most pleasing novelties and additions to our program is a new director of choral music at Albright, and I have a picture of him. Derek Thompson comes to us from Delaware State University, where he directed choirs as well. He has his doctorate in education from the Teachers College of Columbia University, and has been a music educator and choir director really all over the world, certainly all over the United States, but also in the People's Republic of China. He is a charismatic performer himself, a dynamic personality, and the members of the choir just love him. So I think you'll hear some wonderful music making. The first fall concert will be on October 8th, The Sounds of Nature. In December, on December 10th, Carols by Candlelight. In the spring, there will be a gospel concert as well, and then Forever Music, a choral concert on May 6th at the end of the academic year. So we're certainly looking forward to hearing that. Another pleasant surprise, certainly for me, will be some instrumental music. The Reading Friends of Chamber Music, this marvelous 75-year-old hosting organization that has brought world-famous musicians to town for chamber music concerts, is staying in its wonderful venue down in downtown Reading, the WCR Center for the Arts. But the WCR is having some very needed renovations and rebuilding to make that space wheelchair accessible for our patrons. And I think they're very happy to be doing that. What it means is the 3 concerts by a brass quintet, a trio of clarinet and viola and piano, and then finally this new group to our season, the Juilliard-formed Abeo Quartet will be performing in late March. For our students, I think it's going to be great. They walk over from the dorms and hear world-class chamber music, but there will be adequate parking for all of you, and those concerts, as always, are free. Finally, let's talk about the visual arts. As you know, the Friedman Gallery is a nationally recognized venue for contemporary art and has been now for more than 4 decades, and features work by living artists mostly and American artists mostly, and working really on the cutting edge. So this is internationally important artistic expression, and this year will be no different. In keeping with the themes of diversity and equity and inclusion, which are so important at our school, we will be featuring work by women artists, by African American artists, by Native American, indigenous artists as well. There's a wonderful exhibit up right now made up of really 3 different shows in the Friedman, and they will be up until October 6th. A collection of remarkable photographs from this part of the world of a kind of abandoned or vacant Pennsylvania. So diners and dance halls and old movie theaters and that sort of thing in large format, vividly colored prints under the title Things Never Were Normal. And it's a very thought-provoking glimpse at this part of the world, at American style and American identity, and our life during the pandemic as well. There's also a series of paintings, meticulous, just gorgeous, evocative paintings by Rinal Parikh, who is an Indian American artist, and she has interpreted various Indian visual traditions in works that are completely original. And these are the kinds of paintings that you could spend a long time examining and learning from. And then finally, the current exhibit in the project space at the Friedman is an appreciation of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, work by 20 different printmakers who came together and shared their work to commemorate her career and her contribution to jurisprudence and to American life. And those are wonderful to see as well. This is a work by Albright's own Kristen Woodward. We recognize the collar and the bee, and yeah. We could go on and talk about more exhibits, but my suggestion would be for you to stop by the Center for the Arts at Albright College. There's parking nearby, not going to be a problem. Stop by the Friedman Gallery, see those exhibits, and pick up your own copy of this beautiful arts brochure. All the events I've talked about and many, many more events are mentioned in here and described in depth. You'd be able to pick up your tickets to the Big House on September 9th, 30th, October 1st and 2nd. You could even turn to the final page, or penultimate page, I guess, and become a patron of the Center for the Arts. That would be a lovely thing to do. And then you'd receive email notices about what's coming up, and you would help to keep the arts alive, well, and thriving at Albright College. My traditional introduction to the show asks about Albright's impact on the wider community. And I think in the field of the arts, theater, music, the visual arts, fashion, I think our college has a wonderful and positive impact. And I hope that many of you watching tonight will take advantage of it. We hope to see you at an Albright event in the near future. And we'll see you again at another edition of the Albright Scholar in October. Good night for now.